The sound of Christmas music played softly from the old speaker in the living room, while the twinkling lights wrapped around the Christmas tree I'd spent all week decorating sparkled brightly. On the dining table, a freshly roasted turkey glistened golden under a layer of melted butter. Mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce steamed invitingly. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the kitchen, creating an atmosphere that felt warm and serene, exactly like a typical American Christmas. I, Claire Mitchell, 29 years old, had spent the entire day preparing for this moment, hoping that for the first time in years, my family could sit together without accusations flying. But sometimes hope is the most fragile thing in the world. I sat down, still buzzing with happiness after sharing my big news. The company had officially promoted me to project manager. I waited for a hug, a congratulations, or at least a smile. Instead, I got a heavy silence. My mother, Linda, glanced at me briefly before asking, "So, you're still covering my health insurance this month, right? I have a doctor's appointment next week." Her tone was indifferent, as if my success meant nothing to this family beyond ensuring their benefits. I pressed my lips together, telling myself I was used to this. But I still hoped my father, Robert, would say something, maybe just a nod of acknowledgement. He sat at the head of the table, his face cold. His hand gripped the fork tightly, his eyes boring into me. Then, like a knife slicing through the quiet, "You're nothing but a parasite. You've leeched off this family long enough. You'd better be out of this house right after this holiday." His words echoed colder than the winter wind outside. I froze. The piece of mashed potato on my fork trembled in midair before falling back onto the plate, breaking apart in the buttery sauce. My heart felt like it was being crushed. I looked to my mother for some shred of support, but she just focused on cutting her turkey, pretending she hadn't heard a thing. My gaze shifted to Hannah, my 17-year-old sister, sitting across from me. Her eyes were wide, her small hands trembling as she set her glass down. But she didn't dare speak, only lowered her head, as if staying silent long enough would make the storm pass. I took a deep breath. In that moment, my mind raced through everything I'd done, paying the electric bill, the water bill, the internet for Hannah's online classes, even my mother's medical expenses. All of it was in my name. Yet here, in the house I'd been carrying on my shoulders, I was being called a freeloader. "You really mean that?" I asked, my voice soft but clear. Robert slammed his fork onto the table, the sharp clink of porcelain echoing in the once quiet room. "Did you not hear me? I don't want to see you in this house another day. You think paying a few bills makes you the boss here? Don't forget who built this roof from the ground up." My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the anger boiling inside me. I looked down, noticing my fingers digging into the tablecloth. The ticking of the old clock in the living room punctuated each passing second, amplifying the suffocating tension. My mother spoke up, but not to defend me. "Claire, before you go, make sure to pay this month's insurance. I need it for my appointment next week." She didn't even look up. I let out a bitter laugh. Even as I was being kicked out, the only thing they cared about was money. Hannah glanced up briefly, her eyes meeting mine with fear and guilt, as if she wanted to say something but held back. I understood that feeling, the suffocating control, the fear of punishment for daring to speak out. Two emotions tore at me, the urge to scream and smash everything, or to walk away silently to preserve the last shred of my dignity. In the end, I chose the latter. I set my fork down and pushed the napkin aside. Looking straight at my father, I said in a strangely calm voice, "I understand, I get it." My calmness caught Robert off guard. He hadn't expected it. Maybe he thought I'd cry, beg, or lash out, but I didn't give him that satisfaction. In that moment, I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes before he masked it with his usual hardness. Hannah shifted in her chair, as if she wanted to move toward me, but she stayed put. I gave her a reassuring smile, forced but enough to let her know, "I'm okay." I stood, gathered my plate, and took it to the kitchen. My hands felt cold and clammy as I washed the dishes, my heart hollow. Through the window above the sink, I saw the glow of car lights reflecting off the snow, like 1,000 shattered mirrors. I knew this moment had split my life in two, before and after this fateful Christmas. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my old bed, the yellow glow of the lamp casting shadows on the college posters still pinned to the walls. Downstairs, I heard my parents talking in the kitchen, my father's voice full of irritation, my mother's cold and detached. I knew that to them, I was never truly their daughter, just a financial crutch propping up their crumbling lives. The pain twisted in my chest, but beneath it, a quiet resolve grew. If they didn't need me, I would live for myself. I didn't know where that would take me, but one thing was certain: I would never let myself be called a parasite again. As I share this story, I know many of you may have felt the same indifference, coldness, or even betrayal from your own family. If you're carrying those wounds, I want you to know you're not alone. Listen to my story and see that sometimes leaving isn't a loss, it's the start of liberation. If you've ever faced a choice between holding on to yourself or clinging to a toxic family, share your experience. There are nights when silence becomes the loudest sound. That Christmas passed, and my house was so still I could hear my own heartbeat, the cold ticking of the wall clock. I sat at my old desk, a stack of bills piled before me. My small room, once so familiar, suddenly felt like a stranger's temporary shelter. I opened a drawer to gather important documents, preparing to leave. As I sifted through papers, an unfamiliar stack of envelopes fell out. At first, I thought they were just my father's old records, but when the yellow lamplight hit the numbers on a bank statement, my body went cold. An account in Robert Mitchell's name, with a steadily growing balance: 4,000 in July, 5,000 in August, nearly 7,000 by November. Meanwhile, I, the one paying for electricity, water, internet, even my mother's health insurance, had watched my own account dwindle to a few $100s. I flipped through more papers. Among the familiar utility bills, a glossy brochure slipped out. It featured a sleek white fishing boat with my father's scrawled note: deposit $5,500. Delivery after Thanksgiving. Next to it, underlined twice: wait for Claire to pay November bills. I sank onto the bed, my hands shaking. The pieces fell into place. My father's resentful glares when my name appeared on every bill, his muttering to neighbors about losing control of the house. All the while I was grinding to cover expenses, he was secretly saving for a boat, a symbol of his own freedom and personal satisfaction. Humiliation and rage surged through me. For a moment, I no longer felt like a daughter, but like a walking ATM, pressed for cash whenever they needed it. Before I could process this, I found something else. Among the papers were health insurance bills in my name, but the services weren't for routine checkups as my mother had claimed. One clearly stated, lip filler injection, no straws for 48 hours. It was like a bucket of ice water to the face. The days I'd eaten instant noodles 3 times a week to afford those payments, my mother was using my insurance for lavish cosmetic procedures. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. The door creaked, startling me. Hannah, my 17-year-old sister, poked her head in, her eyes red from crying. She stepped closer, glancing at the scattered papers, then at me. Without a word, she placed her hand on my wrist, a light, almost secretive touch. That small gesture carried a world of meaning: fear, pity, and a fragile hope that I'd do something she wasn't brave enough to do. Go back to your room, Hannah. My father's voice boomed from downstairs, laced with menace. She flinched, pulled her hand back, and hurried away. I watched her go, my heart tightening. Hannah was too young, too fragile to stand up to our father's control. But her eyes, they told me she was silently counting on me to lead the way. I sat in silence for a long time, then began sorting the papers into a separate folder. Bank statements, insurance bills, the boat brochure, and every utility receipt with my name on it. I knew these documents were my only defense when I left this house. With each paper I filed, it felt like I was cutting a string that bound me. I was no longer the obedient puppet they pulled. I was facing the truth, painful, but liberating. That night, I barely slept. Lying in bed, I replayed every detail: my father's icy glare, my mother's indifference, Hannah's trembling touch. They swirled into a single question: how much longer could I stay in a place where my own family treated me like a stranger? I knew it was time to leave, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly and decisively. If you're listening this far, you've probably felt the sting of betrayal from those you love. Would you keep enduring or stand up to claim your freedom? If you find this story compelling and want to know how I prepared to leave, comment Y. If not, comment N. Your choice will tell me if this story is worth continuing. There are mornings when you wake up knowing nothing will ever be the same. For me, that morning came right after Christmas. Pale sunlight spilled into the room, casting my shadow on the cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. I'd stayed up all night packing, carefully choosing essentials, clothes, a few bedside books, and the bills in my name, proof I now valued more than sentimental keepsakes. My black suitcase sat neatly by the door. Each zip felt like a pang in my chest. This wasn't a trip. It was an exodus from the place I'd called home. Hannah stood in the doorway, her hands clasped tightly. She said nothing, just watched as I folded each shirt. I looked up, forcing a smile to reassure her. "I'm okay," I whispered, though I was anything but. She nodded slightly, her eyes glistening as if memorizing me before I disappeared from this house. As I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, the wheels clattering on the wooden steps, my father sat at the kitchen table, his gaze cold, like I was a tenant whose lease had expired. He said nothing. My mother stood at the sink, pretending to be busy. No goodbye, no good luck, just a heavy silence pressing on my chest like a stone. I opened the door, and the cold wind hit my face. Drew was waiting in the yard with her familiar old car. When she saw me with my suitcase, she rushed over and hugged me without a word. From the back seat, Max leaned out, offering a crooked smile. "You've got us." Those simple words choked me up. The car pulled away from the familiar street. In the rearview mirror, I saw Hannah at the second-floor window, her hand pressed against the cold glass, her eyes wide as she watched me go. My heart felt crushed. I wanted to shout to her, "You're not alone, Hannah. One day you'll break free too." But all I managed was a silent sob in my throat. The first days at Drew's were an emotional whirlwind. Drew set up a pull-out sofa for me, and Max added an electric blanket to keep me warm. They asked what I wanted to eat, if I needed help moving things. I knew they were worried, but I wasn't ready to share the details. I just whispered, "Thank you." By day, I began what I called Operation Freedom in my little notebook. I called the power company to remove my name from the family account. The operator sounded surprised when I explained I'd been paying for months and now wanted out. Her voice softened. "You've done more than enough." I laughed, a mix of bitterness and relief. Next came the internet, water, and joint bank accounts. Each call was like snipping another tether. Every time an operator confirmed, "Your name has been removed," I felt a little lighter. At night, when Drew and Max came home from work, we ate cheap pizza in a warm atmosphere. They listened to me talk without judgment or interruption, their steady gazes reminding me I wasn't alone anymore. If you want to hear more stories like mine and relate to the struggles I'm facing, check out my previous videos on this channel. Meanwhile, word from the house spread quickly. An aunt called, her voice sharp. "Why did you abandon your aging parents to fend for themselves? They say you're irresponsible, only thinking of yourself." I gritted my teeth, staying silent. I knew my parents had spun a story to protect their image. In their script, I was the selfish daughter who walked out in the dead of winter, leaving them burdened. Hanging up, I sat by the window, watching the snow fall. I felt like a slandered character in my own life story. But then I remembered the folder of evidence I'd brought. Bank statements, the boat brochure, the filler bills. The truth was in my hands. They could lie, but they couldn't erase those cold, hard numbers. One evening, as I sorted through my files, there was a soft knock. Max poked his head in. "Claire, you okay?" I hesitated, then smiled. "Not yet, but I'm getting there." That answer wasn't just for Max. It was a promise to myself. I still thought about Hannah often. I pictured her in her dark room, hearing my father's shouts, seeing my mother's indifference, and remembering the moment she pressed her hand to the window. I knew she was watching me, searching for hope. Maybe by leaving, I'd shown her there was another path, a way out. Those first days of my new life weren't easy. I was living off a sofa, pinching pennies. But something strange happened. For the first time in years, I could breathe. No one was monitoring my spending. No one was berating me for doing my duty. The emptiness wasn't just pain. It was space for me to fill. One late night, I opened my journal and wrote, Day 5. Freedom. Officially removed my name from the electric contract today. Felt like unshackling a chain from my ankle. There are more to go, but I'll break them all. I'm not anyone's ATM anymore. I'm Claire, master of my own life. I sighed, closed the journal, and knew the journey was long, but I'd taken the first steps. Looking around the cluttered living room where I was crashing, with messy blankets and a half-eaten pizza box, it wasn't glamorous or tidy like my old home, but it was mine, at least for now. I told myself, this is the starting line. Outside, the snow kept falling. I imagined Hannah at the old house's window, seeing the endless white. I silently prayed that one day she'd find the courage to step out and breathe the freedom I was beginning to feel. There are moments in life when you know a storm is coming. I'd braced myself for the day my father would show up, but I couldn't have imagined how fierce that storm would be. That night, I sat in Drew's apartment, clutching my folder of evidence, my heart racing. Drew had just poured me a cup of hot tea when a violent pounding shook the door, as if the wood frame might give way. "Claire, open the door, now!" My father, Robert, roared from the hallway. Each bang felt like a hammer to my chest. I trembled, but Drew put a hand on my shoulder, shaking her head. "Don't open it." His shouts grew louder. "You think you can just walk away? You're tearing this family apart. I want to talk right now." The sofa shook as he threw his weight against the door. I heard the wood creak. Neighbors started peeking out, their eyes a mix of curiosity and fear. An elderly woman across the hall shakily dialed her phone, likely calling building security. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. My voice trembled but stayed clear. "There's a man banging on my door, threatening to break in. He's my father." I gave the address, my tone oddly calm, like reading a report. Deep down, I'd been waiting for this moment, the moment I stopped enduring in silence. Within 10 minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed into the hallway. 2 officers approached, shouting, "Sir, step back! Hands off the door!" My father spun around, face red, veins bulging. "This is my daughter. I have rights." But as the officers cuffed his wrists, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. He turned back, yelling, "You'll pay for this, Claire! I'm your father!" Instead of fear, his words felt like confirmation. I'd been right to leave. As the police led him down the stairs, neighbors watched in silence, their looks shifting from suspicion to sympathy. I stood there, trembling yet relieved, feeling for the first time that the law was on my side. But the drama didn't end there. The next morning, as I reached for my laptop to finish a work report, I realized the bag I'd left at the old house was gone. I called my mother, Linda, but her response was icy. "I needed money for the electric bill. You have a responsibility. The laptop and camera cover the debt." I choked out, "Those are mine, bought with my money. I have receipts, serial numbers, you can't—" But she hung up before I could finish. Helplessness surged, but I pushed it down. I opened my folder, pulling out the laptop receipt and camera invoice with serial numbers. Drew looked at me, her gaze steady. "Claire, call the police. Don't let them keep using you." I nodded. The police took the case seriously, more than I'd expected. Officer Williams patiently took notes, checked the serial numbers, and said, "If they pawn them, we can recover them." Her words were like a balm. For the first time, the evidence I'd clung to felt powerful. 3 days later, Williams called back. "We found your laptop and camera at a pawn shop on Parkway. They'll be returned to you. The shop owner confirmed your mother brought them in." I listened, torn between pain and dark amusement. Pain at the raw truth. My mother saw my possessions as disposable. Amusement because, finally, the truth was undeniable, not just my word against theirs. That night, I opened my recovered laptop. New scratches marred its surface, but to me, it was a symbol, I'd reclaimed a piece of my life. Drew sat beside me, saying softly, "See? You're not alone. The law's on your side, and so are we." I nodded silently. A spark of belief grew inside me. I had invisible shields, law, friends, and I needed to learn how to use them to protect myself. In the days that followed, I continued removing my name from shared accounts. Power company, bank, phone carrier, each call meticulously noted. Every, "you're no longer tied to this account," felt like shedding another chain. My parents were surely furious, but this time I wasn't afraid. I remembered my father in handcuffs, my mother's trembling voice when the police called to verify. They no longer held absolute control over me. That weekend, I sat by Drew's apartment window, watching the snow fall. In that quiet moment, I realized I wasn't just escaping a house, I was breaking free from a toxic cycle. I had the right to choose my life. I could protect myself with truth and the law. I whispered to myself, "Claire, you're not a victim anymore. You're a survivor, and more than that, you'll be a victor." Some whispers are small, but powerful enough to shake your world. For me, that moment came when Hannah, my little sister I feared would become a pale shadow of our mother, quietly stepped into the small apartment where I was staying with Drew and Max. She stood at the door, clutching her old backpack, her eyes red from crying. I set my tea down and approached her. Her voice shook, but her gaze was resolute in a way I'd never seen. "I don't want to become Mom." I froze. My heart ached with both pity and hope. It was the first time Hannah had voiced the longing I'd prayed to hear. I pulled her to the sofa, her hands ice cold in mine. She told me our father had forbidden her from seeing me, calling me a traitor, while our mother stayed silent, only urging her, "Don't be like your sister. Don't defy us." But in her eyes, I saw a tiny flame ignite. I gripped her hands tightly. "Hannah, you have the right to choose your own path. You don't have to repeat the cycle Mom and I went through." Her eyes glistened with fear and excitement. I knew this was the moment I had to be a true role model, not just for myself, but for her. In the days that followed, I guided her step by step. I opened my laptop and showed her how to fill out the FAFSA form for college financial aid, something I'd done years ago. I explained each section: family income, school choices, signatures. Hannah listened intently, her eyes brightening as she saw a new door opening. At night, I sat beside her, reviewing drafts of her scholarship essay. The first was hesitant, the words timid. I gently corrected. "Write about you, your biggest fear, your deepest desire. They don't want a perfect essay, they want a real person." Hannah paused, then rewrote. This time, she poured out her fear of being trapped, of living in a house where every breath was cautious. At the end, she wrote, "I want the freedom to be myself, not someone else's shadow." Reading it, I hugged her tightly. That essay wasn't just for a scholarship, it was her first declaration of independence. To prepare for her future, Hannah got a part-time job at a small coffee shop near school. I taught her how to manage her time, how to save her first paycheck instead of spending it. When she felt overwhelmed by school and work, she'd text me, "Claire, can I do this?" And I'd always reply, "You can, I believe in you." Slowly, I saw a new Hannah emerge, not just bowing her head in silence, but learning to push back. One evening, she called me, her voice trembling yet fierce. "Today, Dad yelled at me for seeing you. I told him straight, I have the right to see whoever I want. He was furious, but I'm not scared anymore." I went quiet, pride swelling in my chest. The little sister who once only watched me through a window was now facing the storm. The climax came that summer when Hannah received a partial scholarship to a state university. I still remember her trembling hands opening the envelope, then bursting into tears of joy. She looked up, eyes sparkling. "Claire, I'm moving to the dorms. I don't want to stay in that house anymore." I hugged her, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a college decision, it was a declaration of freedom. Our parents were livid. My father shouted over the phone, "You'll regret this. College won't teach you how to live." My mother sobbed, accusing, "You're abandoning us too?" But Hannah didn't waver. She replied firmly, "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm choosing to live my own life." I stood beside her, my heart surging. Those words were what I'd longed to say for years, but never with the strength she showed today. On the day Hannah moved into the dorms, I went with her. We carried a few small suitcases, some keepsakes. Stepping into her new room, simple but filled with light, she turned to me, eyes misty but proud. "Claire, I did it." I took her hand, whispering, "We did it. You don't have to live in fear anymore." In that moment, I realized my escape from that toxic house wasn't just for me. I'd planted a seed in Hannah's heart, and now it was sprouting, growing into the strength for her to walk her own path. That evening, we sat on the dorm steps holding hands. Before us, the lights of Ohio twinkled. I turned to Hannah and asked, "Are you scared?" "Yes," she said, then smiled. "But I'm not letting fear control me anymore." I nodded, my eyes blurring. We promised each other. We'd never let our toxic past bind our future. We'd live a life of true freedom. A year can feel like a lifetime when you use it to escape darkness and find light. A year after I walked out of that house, my life has changed so much I sometimes don't recognize myself. I stood by the window of my small Columbus apartment, watching the city lights reflect on the glass. The place is barely over 300 square feet, with secondhand furniture, but it's mine. No bills in anyone else's name, no angry calls demanding payment. Every envelope I open, electricity, water, insurance, bears the name Claire Mitchell, and for the first time my name feels tied to freedom. Work has stabilized. The company trusts me, giving me more projects, and my salary covers more than just survival. I've even started a small savings fund, jokingly called my Peace Fund, for when life throws another curveball. This Thanksgiving, my little apartment glowed with light. Drew and Max bustled in the kitchen, laughter filling the air. Hannah came from her dorm, arms full of ingredients, her face radiant. Looking at the scene, my heart swelled. A year ago, I was kicked out of a Thanksgiving dinner in tears. Today, I'd built my own, smaller, simpler, but brimming with genuine warmth. We cooked together, the sizzle of oil and the smell of roasting turkey filling the apartment. Hannah helped mix salad, chattering about school and friends. I noticed her voice was more confident, free of the old hesitance. She'd learned to speak up. As we sat at the table, Max raised a glass. "To the family we choose." Drew laughed. "And to the boundaries we choose to keep." I clinked my glass, a deep gratitude washing over me. Family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's the people who see, respect, and love you for who you are. But the past still lingers. I heard Robert and Linda lost the old house, unable to pay the debts. They blamed the bank, the economy, anything but themselves. A relative sent me a message. "If you'd stayed, things might have been different." But I no longer feel guilty. I know their collapse didn't come from my leaving. It came from the wrong choices they'd piled up for years. I wrote them a short letter, no explanations, no justifications. "I hope you learn to live honestly. I hold no resentment, but I need my boundaries. I wish you peace." Sending it, I felt lighter. Forgiveness to me doesn't mean returning to endure. It's unshackling my heart to be free. That Thanksgiving night, after everyone was full, Hannah pulled out a green envelope with a secretive smile. "I want you to be the first to know." Inside was a letter announcing a full scholarship for an exchange program at another university. I looked up, her smile radiant with pride. "I did it, Claire, because you showed me the way, because you believed in me." Tears spilled over. I hugged her tightly, whispering, "No, Hannah, you did this. You chose your path." In that moment, I knew every pain I'd endured was worth it. From my strength, a seed had been planted in my sister's heart, and now it was blooming, shining. We sat on the apartment balcony, watching Thanksgiving fireworks light up the Columbus sky. The night air was cold, but my heart was warm. Hannah gripped my hand, her voice firm. "We'll never let fear control our lives again." I nodded, squeezing her hand. The past may have left scars, but we'd learn to live with them, not be consumed by them. A year, from tears at a Christmas dinner to radiant smiles this Thanksgiving night, I'd walked through enough pain and struggle to learn a truth. True family is built on respect, not blood. And forgiveness, if it exists, is first for freeing yourself. I don't know what challenges the future holds, but with the courage I've forged and Hannah's hand in mine, I'm ready to keep going. Looking back on this year, I see my story isn't just my pain. It's a lesson in strength, boundaries, and forgiveness. I went from being called a parasite to standing on my own, providing for myself, and most importantly, becoming a beacon for my sister to break free from dependency and live the life she wants. I've learned forgiveness isn't about returning to suffer. It's about unlocking the chains in your heart to be free. My story reminds us that true family isn't defined by blood, but by love, respect, and trust. I hope you, listening to this, find some strength in it for yourself. If you connect with this journey, please hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Your support fuels me to keep sharing real stories that touch more hearts.